Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name is Radha, and I'm here with a family of seekers, and we are studying the Bhagavad Gita together. We are reading through, talking about its relevance to our lives today. This ancient text is still so relevant to our lives today, and we are unpacking that. And today we are in chapter 5. We just started chapter 5 a couple sessions ago, and we are going to start with text 7. We're starting with text 7. And as we've talked about a lot, as we're going through the Gita, we're in chapter 5 now. We'll talk about a lot of the same concepts that we've been talking about, but it's beautiful because Krishna just continues to unpack them. Like they become deeper and deeper. And I think we'll experience that as we're also studying and going through. Hopefully, we'll have deeper realizations around some of these principles, things that we're talking about. So, chapter 5, we're talking a lot about what many of us long for, real freedom, right? Real freedom, not the kind that comes from quitting your job or escaping your responsibilities, but the kind that brings peace and clarity no matter what's happening around you. So we've all tried changing things on the outside, like new routines, new goals, new plans, only to find same stressors and pressures just coming back and back again. Right? So we have a problem. We think that if we change our external circumstance or environment, that we'll have an internal change. But it doesn't always work like that. And Krishna is teaching us why. And he's teaching us what we actually need to do to invoke this change that some of us long for. A way to live and act in the world without getting tangled up in the results. And this is like a whole new lens for many of us. And it's the same principle, again, that we've been talking about for many chapters here now. But as we continue to move forward in chapter 5, it'll get deeper and deeper and deeper. So, this chapter in itself is about moving through life with purpose, staying centered in the soul, and learning how to act with love without losing ourselves in attachment. And there's a difference there, love and attachment. So, we're learning how to act with love without losing ourselves in attachment. We'll elaborate on that specifically a little bit too. And it's incredible because it's not abstract, right? It's practical. We can do it today. We can hear these principles, we can hear this knowledge, and we can apply it today. However, if we're at work, if we're caring for others, whatever we're doing, we can apply this throughout our days. So let's get right into it. We're starting with text 7 today. We started a while back. We started in August, actually, this past August. We started with chapter 1, and we've been going through. So now we're at chapter 5, text 7, and hopefully we'll continue going through each verse until we're finished with the Gita. So in the last section, in text 1 through 6, we talked about the differences between karma yoga and jnana yoga. We really unpacked that. And all these episodes are posted too, and they're on all podcast platforms as well if you want to catch up. But this section in text 7 through 16, Krishna is going to talk about how by fixing our mind on the soul, the karma yogi can remain free from bondage. That's like the theme of this next section that we're going to go into over the next couple days. Okay, so with that, let's just start with text 7. Does anybody want to volunteer to read today? Stella and Stacy, great. Okay. Stacy, do you want to start reading text 7? I'm going to share my screen.
The purport?
Nope, just the verse.
Okay. One who works in devotion, who is a pure soul, and who controls his mind and senses, is dear to everyone, and everyone is dear to him. Though always working, such a man is never entangled.
Thank you. Okay, so again, this is an elaboration of the theme of the first 6 verses. So how is karma equal to jnana yoga? The first phase is not getting bound further. So if one is not attached, even if one lives in a palace, they won't become bound. if they go to the forest, but they're attached in their mind, they still have desires, right? They still have material desires. Even if they go to the forest, they'll still crave those material desires. And we all know this in our own lives, right? Wherever the wherever we go, our mind follows us. We've all experienced this, right? We could leave everything behind, our phone, our job, our relationships, move to a quiet cabin in the forest, thinking that that will bring peace. But if our mind is still craving attention and validation or comfort, these desires will follow us. Has this happened? Can anybody relate to what I'm saying here? I remember when I was in therapy, my therapist gave me this example of this woman who she was a lawyer and she always wanted to open a bookstore. It was like always her dream. And her mother just would not approve, just thought it was a terrible thing, always thought she should be a lawyer. And then her mother passed. And my therapist said, do you think that she opened a bookstore after her mother passed? I said, oh, yeah, she definitely opened that bookstore. She said, nope, she didn't open that bookstore. Right. So it's we think that it's these external things, right? But it's really this internal conditioning, this internal attachments. If someone's attached their phone, even in the middle of a quiet forest, they'll be itching for Wi-Fi. Right? So this is just the way of the mind. And this shows that this external change doesn't guarantee internal change. Real freedom comes from not changing our location, but from changing our attachments. So it's not the place that binds us or frees us, it's the consciousness. And this is what the Gita continues to teach us over and over and over again. We can be free in our mind, and that is real freedom. It's even in your own home, if you're absorbed in service and surrender, you're freer than someone in a remote ashram worrying about their likes on Instagram. So it's sometimes, the environment, it can help invoke an inner change, but that internal change is ultimately what we're looking for to free us. So if someone is attached to Krishna, to God, they can't think of any living beings as separate from God. And this is beautiful to really think about what this means. Again, unpacking these realizations deeper and deeper. It's just like the leaves and branches of a tree are not separate from the tree. If the person understands that by pouring water on the root of the tree, the water will be distributed to all the leaves and branches. And this is the same way. Krishna is the root of our creation. When we direct our love and service towards him, we're not neglecting others. We're actually nourishing the whole. We become loving, compassionate, connected, just naturally. Those things happen to us naturally by loving God, because we see everyone as part of Krishna. And there's no us versus them anymore. We're just a spiritual family. It's kind of like, I have a lot of love for my best friend. And she has these grown kids. And I don't particularly understand them or click with them, but I care about them deeply because I love their parent. This love just extends automatically. And this is what happens when we can develop love for God. We just automatically, it extends to all of his children. We care about all living beings, not just because, everybody's personalities or choices. In fact, we may not even like everybody's personalities or choices. We probably won't. But because we see them as part of him, that love just extends. And this connection changes how we relate, how we forgive, how we serve. When our love flows towards the root of the tree, right? Not the branches, towards the root, it automatically benefits all living beings. And it's really beautiful because it transforms our relationships from being transactional, right? Like I like you because you give this to me and then I give this to you, or you feed my ego and so then I feed your ego. It transforms the relationships from being kind of superficial like that, transactional or needy. It transforms them into being something generous and spiritually grounded. And this is much more substantial and enduring, even in our everyday relationships. So it's a beautiful thing that happens when we pour our love into God, when we water the root, the branches of the tree, the leaves naturally become nourished. So someone in Krishna consciousness is a servant to all and is dear to everyone, and therefore they're pure in Krishna consciousness. And because they're pure, because their consciousness is pure, then their mind is completely controlled. They're not like hankering for things everywhere. Their mind is very controlled because their consciousness is pure. And because their mind is completely controlled, their senses are controlled. And this is because their mind is always fixed on God. Their mind is always fixed on God, and there's no chance of thinking of anything else or anyone else. And someone with controlled senses can't be offensive to anybody. If your senses and your mind are completely controlled, you're not going to be offensive to anybody. You're a servant of everybody. So Krishna here is assuring Arjuna that he'll stay free from bondage if he acts in this way. If he has no selfish motivations, he wants nothing from anyone. He just wants to serve. So this is interesting. This is good for us to think about. How do we know if our relationships are material or spiritual? And there's a couple different layers to that. On the first level, we can think when we meet someone, do you think first thing, what can this person do for me? Right? This kind of selfish mentality. What can I get out of this person? Or do you think, what can I do for this person? Okay, so if we're thinking in that selfish mentality, it's a very material relationship, very transactional, right? Based off of how this person can feed my ego, right? Or do something for me. If we're thinking, what can I do for this person? That's more selfless, that's more along spiritual lines. We can go even deeper and connect that with God. If we meet somebody, and we think, what can this person give me for my sense enjoyment? That's again very material. But if we think, how can this person bless me in my spiritual life? That's more spiritual. So we should kind of, as we have relationships in this world, we're probably going to have different kinds of relationships with different people, but these are good kind of questions to ask ourselves, and we can try to transform more of our relationships into what's enduring, right? What's sustainable, what's watering that root, right? And then extending that love. And again, good question for us to ask ourselves in my current relationships and in the work that I do. Am I seeking to serve or to be served? And where can I shift from self-interest to selfless offering? And it may not be practical, to do this in all of your relationships. You may have a certain work life that requires you to show up in a certain way, but ideally we want to kind of try to transform more of our relationships to this level of selflessness. And that's where we're going to feel the most connection with God and where we're going to feel most uplifted and happy in life. Does anybody want to share anything about that before we move to the next verse? Okay, we'll move to the next verse. Stella, do you want to read verse 8? 8 and 9, sorry.
A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in seeing, hearing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping, and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving, or opening or closing his eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects, and that he is aloof from them.
Thank you. So Krishna here is describing how the transcendental knowledge that we're not our bodies, and we're our souls should be expressed through our actions. So it's one thing to know this knowledge, but it's another thing for this knowledge to be expressed through our actions. What does this look like? What does this look like? Okay, so if we really imbibe this knowledge that I'm not the body and I'm the soul, this knowledge allows us to remain detached from the body as we move around the world. We see our bodies acting, but we have no real interest in the results of our actions. And again, this is like the gold standard, to have zero interest in the results of our actions. But we can take these principles and we can start to make small changes in our lives to move towards this. And in that, we'll experience this ultimate transformation and fulfillment of the heart. So when we have this knowledge that we're the souls, not our bodies, even while the body is acting, body and the senses are acting, we realize that the self is separate from the body. So the first list of things, of activities in this verse, the touching, smelling, eating, moving about, these are meant for acquiring knowledge, for getting knowledge. The second list of things is meant for acting in this world. Okay. And the verse is saying that a wise person understands that while so many things are happening with the body, I'm not actually the doer of these things. I'm not actually the doer. So at one level, right now, like I'm speaking, it seems like I'm the doer. At one level, I'm speaking. That's me speaking. Okay, but this isn't the complete picture. As we talked about in the second chapter, the body is separate from the soul, and it is the body that serves as an instrument for the soul. So if a person desires sense gratification, then the body pursues sense gratification. If a person's consciousness is engaged in God consciousness, the senses are engaged in the satisfaction of God. So the body is just merely an instrument for the soul. It's actually material nature that's working. So I'm a soul, and I don't have a lot to do with the body. I may be in a human body now, but as we all know, my next life I could be in an animal body, or I could be in a higher body. I could be in a different human body. So along with whatever body that I acquire, whatever is the faculty of that body, the soul starts expressing its desires according to those faculties. So like if I'm a horse, I'll make the sound that a horse does. I'm a person, so I have a voice box, and my body is serving as an instrument for my soul through my voice box. So the body's a mechanism, and according to that mechanism, people act. Okay, so we just want to create a little bit of space between the soul and the body, and understand that the body, it's more like a machine. It's more like an instrument to express the soul's desire. So if the soul is not the doer, then who is? Right? Whose reactions is he getting? The point is not to say that the soul is not the doer. It's just to say that the soul is not the independent doer. Okay? So there's more than just the soul that's involved. The soul is not the doer in an isolated sense. So it initiates action, but it needs the body, the mind, and ultimately God's sanction. So that's just to say that we're not the sole authors of our life, though we're still responsible. Okay, so it's like if a tree is cut, the axe is the instrumental cause, and the woodcutter is the initiating cause. Just like, again, for actions in the world, material nature is the instrumental cause, and the soul is the initiating cause. So we've all been given a particular instrument, and it's that instrument that is primarily acting. So all of this is just to say, again, just to create space between the soul and the body and the mind, understanding that these are all different faculties with their own roles. And when we can kind of understand the way that they work, we can maybe get a little bit more control over them. Right? So another example is like a criminal's put into jail. The police is the instrumental cause. The judge is the sanctioning cause. The criminal is the initiating cause. So if a soul suffers, material nature is the instrumental cause. The super soul is the sanctioning cause, right? God within the heart, because God, whatever we desire, he, allows. And the soul is the initiating cause. So it's just to say that the doer is all three. And again, this is all important because we have to learn to see the body like a machine. A machine that's been programmed to behave a certain way. Okay, that's what this outer vehicle is. Okay, it's different from my soul. It's a machine that's been programmed to behave a certain way. So imagine that for whatever reason, we're using a machine, and that machine is programmed to react a certain way. And for some reason, we can't change the programming of this machine. The way that it's programmed to act is the way that it's programmed to act. Okay. Then if we're using this machine, whenever it would start reacting in the way that we don't want it to, we would just reject the reaction without getting too emotionally involved, right? We just see it like that. This is a machine. It was programmed this way. I'm not really sure why. I can't change it. So it's going to act like this. I'm just going to reject that. I'm not going to get too emotionally vested. The Gita is teaching us that this body is like that machine, and we don't need to get too emotionally vested or take it personally. So sometimes our mouths may water if we smell something delicious. Sometimes we may see something attractive or someone attractive and want them or want that. Sometimes we may emotionally react to someone or something in a way that isn't good for us or them. But what the Gita is telling us here is we don't need to let these mechanical reactions change our intention. And that's kind of what this verse is unpacking, is that our inner world has these three levels: the body, the mind, and the consciousness. And action begins first on the level of the body. The level of the body, it will respond to something external, to an external stimulus. Right? And then emotionally, in the level of the mind, we may start to desire that stimulus. And then finally, the conscious intention comes to enjoy that object. But if we can learn to differentiate between these levels, we won't let the physical or the emotional reactions grow into conscious intentions. And that's the difference here, right? Because the soul can be influenced from the outside in or from the inside out. And so we have to be very conscious of this mind-body machine that we have and how it's functioning, what it's doing, because ultimately it's affecting our soul, it's affecting our consciousness. So when we can learn that these three things are different and distinct, we can start to create a little space between them to protect our consciousness. So it's like the owner's manual for the vehicle that we have, the machine that we have. And this point is so important for us to realize and for us to imbibe, is that these things are different. They're different than us. Our mind, our body, it's not us. And this is what it looks like to really imbibe this. This is what spiritual practice can do for us. They can help us to become more aware. They can help us to understand our spiritual identity and the supreme spiritual reality. And this helps us to see our bodies as different than us. And it's so important. It's so important that we see these reactions that we have as just programming, right? And we need to we can acknowledge the programming, but we can then distance ourselves from our physical and emotional reactions. And this is like if someone criticizes you and you feel instantly defensive. Before your conscious mind kicks in, the first wave is just this conditioning, just this programming. Right? The choice to dwell, lash out, or stay steady, that we have freedom there. We can decide differently. We can decide differently than maybe our mind and our body wants to initially react, because there's a difference there. So, and this has probably happened to all of us, right? It's moments where we feel reactive, like our emotions are driving the show. So we could think about what it feels like to watch those reactions instead of becoming them. And man, when I think back on like my dating relationships, or like even things with family, things that I could have reacted different if I was more mindful, if I was more conscious, if I wasn't just acting off of how I felt emotionally in that moment. And then the freedom that can come with that, if we could imbibe that in our relationships, in our workplace, if we could just take a little bit of that space, understanding there's a difference. We're going to have a conditioned response. We're going to have a response just from our programming. If we just give it a minute, right? And we try to imbibe, we try to connect back with source, what's our response going to look like then? Right? How is that going to change? And it will, if we make that conscious decision to turn the soul inwards, connect with source, instead of accept all of this static from the outside, from the environment that's feeding in and affecting our consciousness. But we have to make that decision. We have to make that decision daily, in every moment. And we start by doing things like this, right? By immersing our consciousness in spiritual truths. We start to have deeper realizations around them and start to imbibe them more and more, little by little. So if we understand this, then we understand that I'm not the doer. And this is the point here. And even like a modern science helps us understand this point, that we're not the doers. Just like the way that we breathe, we digest, we heal. We don't do that consciously. That just happens. Our body just does that. These functions are just happening automatically, beyond our control. We don't see them. We don't have to will every breath or every heartbeat. If we did, it'd be completely overwhelming. So this shows that while we may experience doing this, much of what's happening in the body is the machinery of nature acting on its own. And when we can witness the body like a machine, again, kind of change our thinking around it, witness the body like a machine, we can keep ourselves from getting entangled in every reaction or emotion. Just like we don't blame a car for making noise, right? We understand it's part of how the machine works. The body may respond to certain sights or smells or feelings, but as souls, we can remain steady in our spiritual intention. And this is pretty cool. It aligns with neuroscience too. Studies have shown that we react emotionally before our rational brain can even register what happens. Right? Imagine that. We react emotionally before our rational brain even knows what's going on. It's again just the nature of this machine that we have. So if we could better understand it, we can better direct, our consciousness towards what actually uplifts us and inspires us instead of just kind of taking whatever comes in. And this is what the Gita does. It teaches us to create space between the impulse and the intent and the intention. And that's the real spiritual muscle, right? When we have that space between the impulse and the intention, and we're not letting our soul, our consciousness, become entirely influenced by what's coming in. Whatever it is, open door, whatever comes in, just bring it in and let it affect my consciousness. No, right? We have to create that space. We have to create that intention so that we're connecting to source. That's what's fueling our consciousness. That's what's influencing our consciousness. And in that way, we're becoming more loving, more compassionate. We're not becoming a product of whatever environment our machine happens to be in or has been in. So wherever you've been, if your machine has been in some pretty not great places, that's okay. That's no problem, right? You can use this knowledge and whatever conditioning has come in and influenced that machine, you can use this knowledge to connect that soul to source, and you can live from a more inspired place. And that's what this verse is teaching us to do. It's teaching us that the senses may come into contact with sense objects, but that's not the soul doing that. Right? And while the body has natural and necessary needs that should be taken care of, there's no deeper reason to keep chasing sense gratification beyond that, because the soul isn't driven by material desire. And when a person lives with this understanding, meeting the needs of the body without becoming entangled, they remain protected. They can act without attachment, and they don't become bound by their actions. So for a detached soul, there's no desire for sense gratification. The desire for eating food may be there, but it's more of an eat to live, not eat to enjoy mentality. Eat to live, not eat to enjoy. It's just a difference in consciousness. If the enjoy mentality comes in, then they'll become bound by karma. So devotee acts only for the pleasure of God. And Krishna will point us to this in the next verse. So far, Krishna is helping us understand that freedom doesn't come from stopping action, but from changing how we relate to our actions. We're not these bodies, but we're spiritual beings using these bodies. And when we act with awareness of God, we can stay free, even when living fully engaged lives. So for us, we could think about moments that we've felt reactive, right? And what it might have looked like to witness that moment with compassion instead of judgment. And we can all probably think of moments in our lives where this has happened to us, where we've been pulled by this mind-body machine, unaware that it's not really us, and that we have a choice there. And now that we have this knowledge, maybe we can even realize more freely as we walk off this podcast, as we stop, we go about our days. When we start to get pulled into that, when we start to get overly emotional, when we start to act from a place of reaction, and we can see when that's happening, and that's okay. It's going to happen. That's a mind-body vehicle, but we can become more and more skillful and expert at pulling it back in and acting from a different place. And that's what this knowledge is doing for us. It's teaching us that. Does anybody want to share anything about that? Any ways that you relate to this?
Hello. Thanks, Radha. It's Katie.
Katie, there you are.
Hi.
Hey, Katie.
Sorry, I'm driving, so it's hard to raise the hand and stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear about having compassion for ourselves in those many, many moments of reacting. Like sometimes I just feel so fast, like my reactions that are emotional and based are just like so instant and fast to take over. And then sometimes I'll get in like a spin where then I'm thinking about it later at home or alone, where I'm really hard on myself about it. And then I have to kind of be like, get myself out of that. And Yeah, I think it's so helpful to hear like this is going to happen all the time. This is normal for our vehicle. And just to remember, the quicker we can have compassion for ourselves about it, the quicker we can get out of it and get back to Krishna consciousness. Um, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, beautiful. And just to give yourself the time, you don't always have to respond right away. You don't always have to respond to that text message right away, right? You don't have to answer, this girl called me yesterday, this sweetest girl. Her job wants her to move to another location, like from state to state, and she doesn't want to move. She's worried about what that will do to her spiritual life. And she's like, they really wanted me to answer right away. And I'm so easily influenced by what other people are telling me and thinking, they're telling me this is going to be great for my career. And she's like, and I just don't know if that's what I want. I was like, it's so wonderful. She's like, they wanted me to answer right away, but I told them I need at least a day. And her mind was in such array. She's going everywhere. She's having all these reasons. Should I do this? Should I not do this? This is why this is. And I said, maybe just try to turn your mind off for a while and just maybe wake up early tomorrow, engage in some spiritual practices, maybe some more time for chanting. And every time any thought comes into your mind, just let it go. Just release it. Don't let your mind work. And then just see how you feel afterwards. Sometimes we try so hard to be the controllers, to be the doers, to no, no, no. And our mind, bodies, machines get in overdrive that it's like counterproductive when what we really need to do is like plug into source. So the next time that you want to answer, when you're confused about something or you want to answer in a way that, a text message or a conversation in a way that's creating, some tension, maybe just give us some space, give us some time, plug into source, come back and see how that changes for you, or if that fog is lifted and things are a little bit clearer, because I guarantee it will be to some capacity. Some of these problems that we think we need to solve, if we could just give them up, ultimately the solution or whatever it is, will dissolve it. It'll come to us.
Yeah, yeah, and that won't create more chaos and ripples because taking that pause can eliminate what I add negatively to it by
And
reacting so
and
fast,
that's
you
what
know?
karma is. That's exactly what
Yeah.
karma is. Whenever we react to something, we're going to experience some result from what we just did, but also the inner disposition that we create in our minds, right? Whatever happens, if we respond selfishly, we're probably going to be selfish again. It's like,
Yeah.
so yeah, just creating that space, plugging in, we can start to little by little, the influence that this machine has on our consciousness and our souls, we can control a little bit more.
Yeah, and it gave me a memory of even like growing up and as a kid, teenager, young adult, all now. And my sister, well, I haven't heard her say it in a while, which is nice. But my sister would be like, you overanalyze. Like you're always analyzing. Like the mind has a tendency to just really latch on and, and analyze for two. So thanks so much.
Yeah, it does. The struggle is real. I could start like overanalyzer anonymous club for that. It's like it's ridiculous how much we try to control. We think we know. Yeah, turn it off sometimes. Turn it off, let God in, see what happens. Beautiful. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, I just want to
Okay.
share. Well,
Yeah.
this is such a beautiful verse because it's like, or just what we're learning behind this verse. It's just teaching us like how to step back and become that observer of the mind body vehicle rather than the reactor of the mind body vehicle. And it's just like becoming that observer and realizing you're something different than all the reactions that the mind and the body has. Um, that's really what yoga and Krishna consciousness is about, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
teaching to become that observer. And yeah. Um, and then there's so many things you can say, especially in today's day and age. We're in a world where everybody wants instant, 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 reply now, answer now, choose now. And it's just like, wait a minute, we used to live in a world where you had to write a letter to communicate to people, right? And so you had the time. So even though people weren't necessarily, they probably were more God conscious then, but it was like because time was slower, they could stop and think, and they could get in touch with themselves. Now, because everything's so instant, we're so out of touch with ourselves. It's so anxiety inducing, you know? And so that girl who called you, I totally understand that. I remember being in that mindset. And now I've learned to just be like, hey, like, give me some time. I'm going to figure this out. Or, yeah, taking the time to not answer your phone. It's okay. Like, you used to have to leave messages on, it used to be a landline. You couldn't call people when they were out in town. And I tell my daughter that all the time because now she has Messenger and she's like, Mom, I'm not going to be like you. I'm going to answer people as soon as they text me. And I was like, Luna, we used to live in a world when you couldn't message people back right away. And, just keep trying to teach people that and to show people that it's like, yeah, I don't know. I just want the world to slow down. That's my own personal like thing in there. But yeah, becoming the observer and learning to slow down and really just take your time to respond. It's like, it's okay, and you're calmer and you are more connected with yourself, with God, everything. It's a beautiful thing when we do that. But yeah.
Yeah. I love what you said about this point of being the observer, because I think so often, I know my default is to be I want to be the judge, right? I want to judge myself, good or bad, for whatever my mind body vehicle is doing. But if we can step back and say, hey, look, this is the nature, this is the way of the world, this is the way of material nature. You're going to get pulled into this. You're going to react emotionally. This is going to happen. Just take a little bit of space. This is the way it's going to happen. You don't have to judge it good or bad all the time, right? Which is actually brings our consciousness down when we get in this mode of judgment. We just have to know that this is the way that it's going to be, and try to strengthen our consciousness, try to flex our spiritual muscle, and that is what's actually going to improve the mind body vehicle functioning. So we don't have to judge it. We just have to observe it, and then we have to consciously decide what we want to do about it.
Yeah.
It's the beauty of the Gita. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for.
Well, that's so beautiful too of the not judging. There's a Karuna Care course within ISKCON that Rambaru Dasi puts on, and she does a course called Name Your Feelings, Tame Your Mind. And it's like, if you can take a step back and observe and be like, yeah, okay, my mind and my body is grieving, is sad, is angry, then you can name it and you don't have to overly identify with it and judge it and be like, oh, I'm so sad or I'm so angry. What's wrong with me? You can just be like, oh, okay, this is my human experience experiencing that. How can I observe this? How can I honor it? And then how can I connect it to, feeling, to needs, to wants, to desires, to values, and work through it and then communicate about it.
Yeah, that's
But
exactly what we would be doing if we understand that what we actually are is a spirit soul, and that this is a mind body vehicle
yeah,
that we have to tame, that we have to understand, and we have to try to program it to work to our instrument, to our desire, right? To our actual desire, instead of taking whatever it perceives out there and letting it influence the soul,
yeah,
and then thinking that that's us. Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Someone
Stace-
posted a chat there.
Oh yeah, I grew up without even having a landline. It all worked out. Ryan, he says. I love that. I'm one of those people, I don't feel like you always have to pick up the phone. If you're like really busy or your mind is just like not in a place to have a conversation, it's okay to call them back. I don't know if anybody else is in that mindset. My mom's probably like rolling her eyes right now because she always gets on to me. But I don't always pick up the phone if it's like if I'm just not there, if I just don't feel like I could be present in a way that I need to be, that I'd like to be. Okay, Stacy.
Um, Gosh, this one is really like I feel like I could cry almost when I'm listening to you speak about this text, and then hearing everybody like, because the reality is that for so long, like for I don't know, 40 years, I had a different I had a different car driver, right? So that car driver acted out of emotion. As soon as something had happened, and before it even finished happening, I was already with a snide remark or a snide this or an emotional, or I was crying, or just the idea that I did that for so long. So I love the idea that I can have compassion to say, like, okay, you know what, you did that a long time, like, give yourself a little bit of a break. And not answering the phone, like, if I want, like, for me, if I want to, like, I have filled my life, I've bookmarked it with the Gita in the morning. Right before this, I chanted for 2 hours. Then I came to here, and now I'm talking about the Gita. Then I have another reading later. Like, I have to, because I'm not living in Mayapur, right in this beautiful village, which I would love to do. I need to make these connections so that when somebody calls and I'm like, ooh, and actually my husband is the one who says, when something comes and I'm like, I can't, and I'm like, right, like, that comes out, Ravana comes out, and then I'm like, he's like, leave it, let it sit. And then sometimes I'll even just do an extra jop around. I'll sit upstairs and I'll be like, and I'll talk to Krishna and I'll say, what should I do here? How should I proceed? Because I don't want to create more of that negative karma, one. And two, I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't
Yeah.
want that. I want to
Yeah.
connect with source,
So beautiful. You're telling
behave.
us exactly how you're living this, and that's exactly how you do it. And you appreciate your vulnerability so much. And you're not alone. We all have that same struggle. And wow, what a beautiful example of how you're living it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Stacy. Thank you. Okay, we have one more verse here. Let's move on to this last verse, and then maybe we'll have a little bit more time for sharing too. Stacy, do you want to read this last verse for us?
Text 11, right?
I think it's 10. It's 10.
Oh, 10. Okay. One who performs his duty without attachment, surrendering the results unto the Supreme Lord, is unaffected by sinful action, as the lotus leaf is untouched by water. Mm.
This is like a beautiful imagery of of the result of this detachment. One who performs his duty without attachment, right? When the soul offers the action to God, to the absolute truth, such a person doesn't become bound by karma. So when we offer work to the absolute truth, when one doesn't get themselves emotionally involved in the actions of material nature, they don't think that I'm the doer, I'm the enjoyer, then they don't become bound. And we all know, to the degree that we're attached to results, we suffer, because this attachment creates this sense of ownership, which in turn causes anxiety and suffering, because we fear losing what we believe that we own. This is the cycle. This is what happens. And this can be difficult because naturally we all seek some security in life. That's natural. We're all going to seek some security in life. And oftentimes we try to get that security by trying to control our lives with plans, patterns, routines, and we get so married to these things. Anybody else fall into this category? This is like my MO, right? To get security in life, I'm like, I'm the controller. I'm going to plan. I'm going to have a routine. If something's not in my routine, it's like I don't even know how to work with it, right? It's like this is how intense I can be, right? But what happens is our plans get crushed, and then we become sad and disappointed that things didn't happen the way that we wanted them to. Again, this is just the nature of the world that we live in. We're going to suffer these anxieties from either our own bodies, other people, or the world around us. If we live in this material world, it's only a matter of time until we're going to learn that we're not actually the controllers or the doers. Even if you run a pretty tight ship at home, it's like, a month could pass and you could get diagnosed with some kind of, like, disease or something that pulls you down. It's like, just when you think you have it, the material world shows you that you don't. And that's the lesson that we need to learn. And we become so ignorant to because we become so convinced that we're actually the controllers, especially if you're pretty good at controlling, like me, right? We become convinced until material nature kicks us down and we realize, wow, I'm actually not. Right? And then we can get hyper defensive, right? We can resent whatever went wrong. We can lash out at whoever we think is to blame. And again, this is where Gita wisdom can help us. It can help us understand that the problem is not the outer situation, but our internal expectation. That's really what detachment is, right? Letting go of expectations of people. Not letting go of care for people, letting go of expectations. Right? That's what we have to understand. We're expecting security where it doesn't exist. Right? The material level, security, it doesn't exist. Change is inevitable. It's inescapable. We need to seek security in the right place at the unchanging spiritual level. That's where we need to seek our security in our eternal identity and our everlasting relationship with God. See you, Stella. Have a good day at work. Thanks for joining. That's where we need to find security. Right? Once we find this inner security, we won't be as shaken by material upheavals. We can function at the material level without being affected by it. If we could really get our security. And this is where this imagery comes in, like a lotus leaf untouched by water. Right? If water falls on a lotus flower, it doesn't stay wet for very long. Right? Same with dirt, because the water comes and then it just slides right off of it. It's like this beautiful property of lotus, right? In fact, like commercial industry has observed how these lotus leaves are constructed, like the surface density and the surface tensions, and they've replicated it in like skyscraper buildings to keep them clean. So like if water sprinkles on them, the walls are made in such a way that like nothing sticks to them. That's how they stay clean. Anyway, we can be like that. We could be like these lotus leaves untouched by water. When things happen, when things shake our material existence, it just rolls off us because we're getting so much security from our relationship with Source. And that's where we're taking real shelter in. And then just like Katie was saying, the karma will just wash off us. It doesn't bind the soul. The karma just washes off because there's no emotional attachment. That emotional attachment is what keeps the soul bound. But if that's not there, then the karma, it just washes off. And this doesn't mean that we become like stone-like. It just means that we become motivated by spiritual vision such that the material upheavals don't shake us. When adversities enter into our lives, our core remains untouched. So just like we talked about in past sessions, detachment, it doesn't mean apathy. It means that we're so rooted in our love for Source that we don't get tossed around by people's praise or blame. Because we know our real eternal identity. And we're not, these other little things that shake us throughout our days are just that. They're just like little blimps, right? So it's just kind of changing the perspective. So if a devotee is working in the material world, they can stay detached if they work in this way. If they understand that they're not the doer. The dirt just comes off, the criticism, the disappointment, even praise. It doesn't stick, it just rolls off. That's the kind of freedom that the karma yogi experiences. So someone without God consciousness acts according to the concept of the material body and senses. They think that they're that. And that can get us in so much trouble, as all of us have experiences, and so many of you vulnerably shared. But when we have this knowledge, we can live congruently with our eternal nature, right? And we're learning how to do that. And this is what this does for us, just like beautiful Stacy was talking about. That now when your mind, body, vehicle wants to react, you have this knowledge, you can plug in and you can act according to who you are, to who you actually are. Now that this illusion is lifted, that you're not actually your body and your mind. Someone in God consciousness acts according to this knowledge, that the body is the property of God and should therefore be engaged in the service of God. And this is how Krishna is addressing Arjuna's question as to how someone working in the material world can stay free from bondage. So again, Arjuna's asked this question a couple times. He asked this question in chapter 3. Krishna answered it. But as you're seeing, and I hope you're feeling from this class, Krishna is answering this. Every time Krishna answers these questions or talks about these principles, it gets deeper and deeper. It's like the lotus just like opens more and more, and deeper and deeper knowledge is revealed. So for us, we can think about, we can all maybe think about an area in our life that we cling too tightly to the outcome. And then we can think about what it might feel like to loosen that grip and trust Krishna instead. So whether we're in the middle of a battlefield, an office, or a forest, if our work is offered in devotion, if we remember we're not the doer, and if our heart belongs to Krishna, we remain untouched, just like the lotus in the rain. And that's what we're learning today. Let's see. Maria, please share with us.
Yes, I felt like that for years. I felt like I was just in total transcendental energy, just lifted and untouched and protected. But this last move that I just made just really took me under. It was my third move in 5 years, that couldn't be helped, just circumstances. And this one really brought me to my knees.
That's wonderful.
But now I feel sort of lost.
Also wonderful. This is good. This is good because this probably existed in you all the time and you just hadn't been faced with something enough to bring you here. And now that you are, it can be an impetus for you to go deeper in your relationship with God. And in that way, it's a blessing. I mean, do you feel that at all? Do you feel even
Right now I feel like I just want to run. I just want to, and I don't know where I would go. I don't know what I want.
Well, you're here, and I know you're going to Kirtan tonight. So I'm interested to maybe hear from you about this in like, I don't know, in some amount of time and see, because my feeling is that you'll go deeper and have more realizations as if you're taking shelter of God, which is what you seem to be doing.
I hope so.
Wow.
It's your Arjuna moment.
It is. And we're all cheering for you, Maria.
Thank you.
We all go through a moment in life where it shakes us to our core. We're like, I don't know what to do. What's my purpose? Like, my life is falling apart. And that's our Arjuna moment, And, the more you go into it and you don't run away to the forest like Arjuna, you'll find Krishna he'll just make it better and you'll figure it out. And like, you'll have like this newfound clarity and surrender that will be even deeper than you've ever had,
Can I wanted to share, I shared this with you, Radha, that when I moved to Canada 10 years ago, Maria, and it wasn't something I'd never been to Canada. And it brought me to my knees. It brought me to my knees, and it did. It took me time, and I didn't reach out right away. It really took me time, but when I finally did, it was in such a way of like Draupadi. Like I was like, oh my God, like please, I can't live like this anymore. And I was like, Krishna was literally like, he was right here. Like he was so, it was such I mean, it took a while, but I stayed the course. And like like what like you're talking about it. So I know, it's like, but I fought it. And that was my demon, was that I was like, I thought I was the controller. I can move it and drive it. And instead of just saying, Krishna, please help me. If I would have done that a while ago, but again, that was not I'm past that, and that was not Krishna's arrangement. But I'm telling you, it doesn't like it can. Like it happened to me. Like I moved from New York, lived there my whole life, to Canada. Didn't know a soul. And I figured it out. If I can do it, you can.
We take shelter of God. God gives us, this is God's grace, right? We take shelter of God, and these things that seem, disastrous or make us full of anxiety or depressed, or we take shelter of God, we can lift up higher out of that than we even were before, like a raising falcon. Yeah.
The key phrases you guys are using is getting brought to your knees. That's a perfect form to surrender, and that's what these situations are for. That Radha is right. If you're forced in a situation and Krishna's organizing circumstances that are bringing heavy emotions up out of you and anxiety and stuff, that stuff was already hiding inside of your soul. Now it's up at the surface where it can be washed off. And like Mariah said, you could either run like Arjuna wanted to, or face it head on with Krishna consciousness and find out how Krishna's using this circumstance to get you to a deeper state of surrender. Because surrender is not like a action, it's a state of consciousness, and there's no limits to it. The more you're leveling up, the more creative he's going to get with organizing circumstances that are going to push you out of your comfort zone and closer to him.
Oh, nice. And if you're hearing this and you're like, okay, I'm going through it right now and I don't want to hear all of this, that's okay. And that's probably natural. But know that if you stick to the course, there's hope for you. And that's really the beautiful thing about this practice. Even if you don't want to do it, or, it's like you don't believe, just stick to it. And then come back and share your realization with us, like all of you have here. Thank you. Kalpana, do you want to share any?
No, I'm listening, and everything is like, so connecting, because the breathing, the digestion, all these things, we are not the controller, but all this life we think we are. But, as we get closer and as we connect with God, we have to learn that we are not the controller.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anybody else want to share before we end for the day here? Thank you, Sean, for being here. Thanks for our new folks who joined us today. Stacy, some fun.
Thank you.
Fun group here. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I thought that was so nice what you added there also, Stacy. Like, the more we resist it, the harder it is. But it's letting go of that resistance, which is hard. Like, it's so hard to let go of that resistance. But
no, you just went off. There you are. Come back. Unmute.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Once we let go of that resistance and just surrender and let God's plan unfold where we're at, it's easier. It really is easier. And it's hard, but it is hard to let go of that resistance in the beginning. It's so difficult because we want to see it our way, and we're attached to how we want to see it. But once we let God do his work, it's like, oh my God, this is better than what I could have imagined or done or anything, and that's the beauty of it. But yeah, it's a practice. It's a daily practice.
Thank you, Mariah. And just one more plug for Mariah here. Mariah's going to start a Gita group Wednesday nights, 7:30 p.m. She's going to give out like a couple verses each week for people to read and kind of meditate on. And then you guys will get together, and I think she'll also have some prompts of like how to apply it to our lives. And then you'll get together and just talk about that and how it resonates with you in your life. And just to try to imbibe this text a little bit more, make it a little bit more real and living in our lives. And that's more kind of like a private group. It won't be recorded or anything. So people can kind of bond and continue to try to imbibe this ancient wisdom. So if anybody's interested in that, could text me or her. We're all on the Seeker's Quest thread, and we can get you in on that.
Hi, thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. And we will see you Monday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Very well. Thanks, everyone.